welcome upstage His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Ghana.
Thank you. I want to appreciate your faculty, your lecturers, for the good job they continue to do in maintaining the standards of this university. Ghana is having a problem with macroeconomy in terms of deficit, in terms of inflation figures, in terms of interest rates. And often what causes a deficit you can relate to your own families and the budgets that you run. When you have a situation where your expenditure exceeds your income, then the difference between expenditure and income becomes the deficit based on your family gross domestic product. The deficit, as at the end of 2012, was close to 12%, 11.8%. So 11.8% of GDP. Now, it is preferable to have your deficit in single digit and as low as possible because it affects the macroeconomic environment in which businesses operate. And so where you have a rising deficit, it also pushes up inflation and it pushes up interest rates. So what is the cause of the deficit? The cause of the deficit is increased expenditure as a result of several factors that I'll go into. And then also a decrease in revenue as a result of some factors that I'll mention shortly. Decrease in revenue in the sense of the fact that Ghana's economy has become a part of the global economy. And so what happens in the global economy affects us. Now what happens in one part of the world affects another part of the world. We had enjoyed a boom in international commodity prices from about 2010 till about 2012. When cocoa and gold reached record highs. Now, from 2012, there was a decline in commodity prices, and gold suffered a very serious dip in price. Cocoa suffered a very serious dip in price. Between 2012 and 2013, export revenues into this country fell by $1.3 billion. And for a developing country like Ghana, with a GDP of our size, a reduction in export revenues of $1.3 billion naturally will cause some challenges in the economy. But the issue we must ask ourselves, and that's what I asked in the State of the Nation address, is why should we, 57 years after independence, continue to have the structure of economy that we have? Why should we, 57 years after independence, continue to be dependent on the export of commodities and raw materials? And that's the question we need to ask ourselves. Why are we not adding value? Why are we not processing more? Why are we not creating more pillars for our economy to stand on? Every country has its major pillar that holds up its economy. But you must make the pillars that hold your economy as varied as possible and as many as possible so that if there's a decline in one, it does not affect you frontally the way it affects us when we see the same decline in our commodity prices. Aside from that, we've suffered from what we call wage pressures. As a result of the implementation of the single spine, wages and salaries went up to the extent that a good portion of our tax revenues were being used to pay wages and salaries. This year's negotiation was protracted because of the critical nature that wages have adopted with regards to our budget. Now, in transforming any economy, there are several major factors that you require. One, of course, is the human resource. You must have the appropriate human resource to be able to do that. And that's why education continues to remain a priority for government. We have to expand secondary education to ensure that more of the children coming from basic education are able to find places, and also to expand tertiary education so that more of the young students coming out of secondary can find places. I feel very pained when I see students who have made several A's and probably one B turned away from medical school because we say we don't have space. And so, for instance, that bottleneck of medical school turning away straight A students, because there's no space, is something that we need to work on and bring to an end as quickly as possible. And that is why I was telling the Minister of Education that in converting the polytechnics into technical universities, we must make sure that we do not lose their focus as technical universities. And at least a number of these polytechnics that are being converted to technical universities should be technical universities that provide training in the medical area, so that we can expand the training of doctors and create more space for students who are qualified to do medicine to be able to find places. We also need to prioritize vocational and technical education. And so that is a very important aspect that the Ministry of Education is focusing on. We have to maintain a link between faculty and industry. And I stress this again in the State of the Nation address, because if we don't have that link between faculty and industry, how do we know in what areas to expand training? So in the State of the Nation address, I asked the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Employment and Social Welfare, together with the universities, to organize a roundtable with industry and discuss what kind of skill sets they need, so that we can guide students when they're selecting the courses to be able to know the areas in which they readily can find employment. And my information is that roundtable is going to take place soon, sometime in June. And if it does take place, the information that will be generated from there will be very helpful to university when they are setting up the curriculum and when they are allocating places to students within the university. I think that would be a very good thing. There should also be a link between academia and business. I was watching a video and I was very impressed. And it was a video being screened by the Skills Development Fund. And they've partnered with the Animal Production Division of the University of Science and Technology. And they are revolutionizing pig production in the Ashanti region. That is exactly what we expect of universities and places of learning, that the learning that takes place here is practicalized in terms of reforming and changing the lives of our people. And so I'd like to see more of that collaboration. Indeed, government has a lot of money for skills training. And if we can partner with the universities, not only the Animal Science Department of Tech, we can partner with other departments and faculties of the University of Science and Technology to be able to draw up programs that change the lives of the people in terms of providing them with skills. I mean, there are a lot of young people here in Kumasi who are trading and other things. We can give them other skill sets with which they can set up their own businesses and be able to make a living. And I want to tell the Vice Chancellor that government is willing to partner with you. If you come up with proposals that you want implemented, I'm prepared to work with you to ensure that the funding is made available. Another area I would like to talk about is energy. Another area I would like to talk about is energy. One of the most critical constraints to the development of our nations is a lack of power. If you don't have power, you cannot maintain your rate of development. Ghana is growing at an average of above 7%. Our growth rate fell in 2013 because of the energy crisis we went through at the end of 2012 and the beginning of 2013. Now, what is the constraints on energy in Ghana. Currently, it's not our installed capacity, because our installed capacity exceeds our demand for power. Ghana currently has an installed capacity for the production of about 2,850 megawatts of power a day. Our current consumption is slightly above 2,000 megawatts per day. So then what is the reason why we have an energy crisis? We have an energy crisis mainly because of the fuel mix. We have hydro, which accounts for, Akosombo has 1,020 megawatts, Pong has 110 megawatts, Bui has added on 400 megawatts. And so that's our hydro potential. The rest of our power is thermal. And thermal produced with light crude oil, LCO, and partly with liquefied natural gas, which we receive through the West African gas pipeline. Now, LCO is one of the most expensive fuels to use for thermal generation. It is only exceeded in cost by diesel fuel. And so we are spending almost $3 million a day, do the mathematics, $3 million a day to import light crude oil to fire the thermal plants to provide power. As we did with the telecom sector, today anywhere in this country you go, you have telecommunications. We deregulated the sector to allow the private sector to invest in the telecom sector. And so you had the space phones of this world, the Vodafones of this world all came in. What we did with telecoms, we can do with energy. Because government alone, VRA alone, cannot raise the investment to be able to put in enough power. And so you have to get independent power producers to come in. But independent power producers will come in and put in private capital only because they are assured that they will get a return on their investment. And so you need to adjust the power tariffs to make it attractive for them to be able to come in. Now, our major constraint today is that we continue to rely on the West African gas pipeline, which has proved to be very unreliable. We cannot predict on any day how much gas is going to come through the system. On some days, it is 90 million standard cubic feet. On other days, it is 10 million standard cubic feet. And so anytime gas in the West African gas pipeline drops and it's not enough, then Asogli, which is one of our power generating stations, has to shut down because Asogli runs on only gas. It doesn't run on anything else. And Asogli alone provides 220 megawatts of our power. So if on a day-to-day basis, you cannot be sure whether you have 220 megawatts available or not, then you have the kind of crisis that we have. And so, going forward, Ghana's energy security is dependent on developing our own gas resources. And that is why Ghana gas is critical and must come on stream at the shortest possible time. Because Ghana gas, using gas from the Jubilee field, is capable of providing us with 120 million standard cubic feet of gas a day. Now, if we're sure of 120 million standard cubic feet of gas a day, then we can be sure that a lot of the generation from Abuaze can be cut over to gas. And when the 10 field is developed, there's associated gas that will also increase the amount of gas that we are able to have. And that is why government is focusing on bringing the Ghana gas supply on stream as quickly as possible so that we have security of gas supply and energy so that we can ensure that this country continues to grow. But recently we've taken some new decisions, and I'm sure that we'll continue to dialogue with your energy department here because you have the skills in this place to be able to advise, to change the mix of fuel we use by also introducing coal generation. Coal had become a very unpopular means of generation because of the pollution that it caused. But today, my information is that there are third-generation coal plants that have resolved a lot of the pollution issues and are able to trap a lot of the carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide and other things that it generated. And so we're going to introduce some, I'm sure you would have seen it in the newspapers, we've signed an agreement with Asogli, Shenzhen Power, to introduce the first coal-fired plant into this country. The important thing is to have such a mix of energy sources that one cannot be the source of a dislocation of your industry and business if there's a problem with that particular source. And that is why we have the Renewable Energy Bill too, that says that at least 10% of our total energy mix should come from renewable sources. And so we're looking at solar, because Ghana has a lot of sunshine. We're looking at wind, because there are some parts of Ghana that have sufficient wind to be able to generate power and add to our power mix. We're also looking at mini hydros. Ghana has not reached the end of our hydro potential. We have several sites where we can get between 50 and 80 megawatts of power in terms of mini hydro dams, and we intend to explore all those areas. So that's the issue of energy. Another important critical factor for transforming an economy is transport, opening up a country to goods and services. And so transport is going to be one of the major focuses that we're looking at, doing the road network, reviving the railways, expanding aviation. One of the first things I did when I landed in Kumasi was to inspect the work going on at the Kumasi airport, the resurfacing of the runway, the installation of the instrument landing system to allow planes to come in at all times of the day and night. And so not only Kumasi, but other airports we shall develop so that transport is facilitated, that the roads are much better, that we start the railways. But I want to say that transformation takes time. Transformation takes time. And often in the midst of change, things might look more chaotic than they should. But ultimately, after that chaos, we'll see progress and we'll see development. I want to also mention a project that we'll be inaugurating shortly. I've always told our young people that you don't necessarily have to be an employee. You don't necessarily have to come out of school and expect that somebody will employ you. You can also set up a business and employ people. And I'm sure that many of you here I'm sure that many of you here have the entrepreneurial spirit to be able to set up your businesses. But of course, you need to be assisted. You need to be assisted to stand up on your feet and be able to do this. And so we're introducing, and I'll inaugurate it soon, a new project, a new initiative called the Youth Enterprise Support Initiative. That initiative, we have committed 10 million Ghana cedis to start. And so for those of you interested, start preparing yourselves. We're going to open it up to youth all over the country. And you will present proposals to the Youth Enterprise Support Initiative. If your proposal is one of those selected, you will be helped to develop the proposal into a feasibility study. And I'm sure that we can count on the universities to help us to be able to implement this project. Now that feasibility study will be costed, and then you'll be giving the finance and capital to be able to set up that business. And then we will choose an existing business person to be your mentor. And so he will come to your facility, he will guide you, he will look at your books, he will make sure you're keeping good books of account, and he will mentor you until your business grows. And then when your business grows, we'll graduate you out of the program, and then we will bring new people into the program. So look out for the Youth Enterprise Support Initiative. When it comes out, when it is inaugurated, some of you might become big businessmen out of the Youth Enterprise Support Initiative. The last thing I'll leave you with is that we must change our country from being a consumption economy. And I've said this several times. There was an article that I authored in the Graphic recently. I looked at the import numbers and a lot of the things that were importing. And the painful thing is that a lot of those things we're importing, we can produce locally. And so it's a challenge both to the young people and also to our existing businessmen and industries. that let's look at the things that we're spending a lot of money importing and see how we can do that production locally. I gave a sample of some of the products, starting from even palm oil. You'll be surprised that we import palm oil, close to $100 million worth of palm oil a year. Several other products that I listed, if you looked at the total import bill for those products, it approached more than $2 billion. And so if we were able to produce those items here and reinvest that $2 billion in our economy, imagine what difference it will make to this economy. So it's also a challenge I throw to industry. It's a challenge I throw to the young people here to see how those of you who have an entrepreneurial spirit, if you come out and we support you, you'll be able to look at areas where we are currently importing so much and be able to do import substitution industries that will help us to survive. Thank you very much for your attendance and for your attention, and to say that I will continue to interact.